nation under God, indivisible, liberty and justice.
Thank you, sir. Director Spraggins, if you want to lead us in a prayer.
Yeah, first off, I just, want to say that, let's keep the people in mind. Had another plane crash yesterday and, rolled over in Toronto and, luckily nobody was killed this time. So everything's going better with that, but hopefully I can't imagine what the ride was when they hit the runway and then they flipped upside down and landed, and sitting there hanging. So it got to be a terrified thing. So keep everybody in your mind, and then the ones in the tornadoes the other day, so keep them in your mind, and let's go to the Lord. Our Heavenly Father, we thank you for everything that you do for us. We thank you for you giving us the ability to be able to have this agency and to be able to run the agency, and hopefully we just do it your way, Lord, and not ours. And we just ask that you give us the wisdom to do it the way you would have it done and not us. We ask this in Jesus Christ's name. Amen.
Thank you, Director Spraggins. Has everybody had an opportunity to review the minutes from January 24th? And if so, do we have any questions?
Got one question. Oh, no, never mind. So,
all right. If not, do we have a motion to approve?
Motion.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All right. And then the approval of the agenda for the day. Does anybody have any questions on the agenda? If not, do we have a motion to approve that?
Motion
Motion.
to approve.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Director, this looks like it's all yours.
okay. So, looking at it, we'll go first off with the employment contracts. I took just a couple of motions. Jennifer Cumbers and Allison Caron, Alicia Caron, Caron have been promoted. So, always glad to be able to do those. Next. I don't think we have any contracts, do we? Okay, no contracts. All right, the agency update. First off, if you have any comments, any public comments, see TJ in the back there and get it to him so we can get it up here. Also, next commission meeting is scheduled for Tuesday, March 18th at 9 a.m. Any problem with that for the commissioners? Jonathan, you on board?
I'm actually scheduled to be in Boston then, but I can certainly call. That's an international seafood show.
Okay, all right. But you can, all right. A little bit of legislative update, just to give you an idea of where we're at. We had 4 bills that we had in, that we had put in. And the crawfish seafood, the seafood marketing bill, labeling bill, that's still in going forward. Our public records is exempt form is still going forward. Excuse me. Exempt to certain leases and basically for the off bottom is what we're talking about. Is that the tax revenue and stuff will go back to us, and we trying to get the counties out of it because it's just causing them a lot of problem. When people delinquent on their tax and then they go and sell the property which they can't sell because it's state property. And it just causes a whole bunch of issues on them, and we're trying to straighten that out. The boater vessel deal, that's coming out of Ports and Marines also, but it's also a wildlife thing that they put forward on that. We out of that's in the House and the Senate. We got the boater deal still there, and then we got the Mississippi Comprehensive Coastal Conservation and Restoration Act of 2025. It's live there. Public Trust Tidelands Assessment Fund is alive, and approval for oyster leases by the Department of Marine Resources clarifying authority is out there, and then authority for the Secretary of State to approve leases for Public Trust Tidelands is there. So we got several bills we're looking at. We don't know where they'll be. Obviously, if they're a revenue bill, they have till the end of the month, I think 26, I think it is, TJ, to be able to come out. If they're not revenue, they're already out. If they didn't, they've already died on the floor. And so we'll just, the Menhaden processing plant odor elimination died on the floor with the House, and also administrative hearing died on the House. Let's see, several things, oyster bottoms that died, but one of them, once, a lot of the things that die in the House will be taken up in the Senate. A lot of things died in the Senate will be taken up in the House. So all they're doing is basically, very few of them are ever double, and then they'll go back and they'll pass them out of the Senate and pass them out of the House, and they'll send it to the other, and then it will go to them. And if they pass at that point, they'll go to conference, or either they'll be passed, or either they go to conference. So most of the time, you're looking toward the end of March before we're going to know anything as to what's going to happen. So just a heads up on that for everybody. Also, we got update on our own bottom lease program. Right now, to tell you where it's at, we have received applications, but we have decided to use a third party to grade it. So it's not going to be graded by the Department of Marine Resources, and we used a third party to do the finance. And so whatever you filed as far as your financial doing, ability to be able to do on bottom leases, that went to a accounting firm. And now we're in the negotiation, trying to finalize a contract with a group out of Jackson to be able, and they're going to be the ones that are reading, and they will take all the applications and grade them according to what their ability to be able to coach and what their ability in the past have been and how they've harvested and their experience. And so those things will be put together. I have no idea who they are. Some people might, but I don't. I have no idea. I have not seen a single one of them. So when I had people ask me for the names, I can't give them to you. They're sealed. They're sealed in a computer, and they're sealed in an envelope, and they're going to that group in Jackson, and I don't want them to know the names, and they will see it when they unopen it, but they're going to grade this thing with the names redacted. They want to grade it with the names redacted out of it. That way nobody can say that they knew somebody. Nobody said that I had friends with somebody or nobody else. They're going to grade the actual, whatever the person in for their own bottom lease, they're going to grade it that way to that point. And if it ever gets to a point they have to ask the question, then it'll be another group in that same organization that goes and asks the question to the people, and then they will come back and give it to that. So it will never be graded by the people grading the actual forms of what was sent in, the applications, will not know the names. And that way we can keep this, I want it as open as we can to be honest about everybody, and they get it by what they put in and not by what. And they will, if you're one of them and they have questions, somebody in that organization that does not grade you will be calling and asking that question. And they will come back and give it back to that organization. That group. We're just trying to keep this as straightforward as possible. We want everybody to know that if a lease is offered to an organization or company, that they're the ones that grade it out as the best to be able to get that lease. So where we're at on it, I don't know. I can tell you right now, they're going to be working on it, and until that point, I don't know where we'll be, but it's going forward as we speak right now. There's nothing been done other than the fact that the applications, and I mean, we do know there was 61, applications. We know that were turned in, but I don't have a clue what the names are. So if you ask me and I tell you I can't give it to you, I don't know them. And I did that on purpose because I don't want to know. I don't want somebody thinking that anybody in this agency is doing anything different. I want it separated 100%. So that way that whenever it's graded out, they will come back to us and give us a grade of this is what the finance, this is what the ability to do the job, and they'll put them both together and they say, for this piece of property, this little area right here, this company right here graded the best. And then we'll move to the next one, If 3 of you applied for the same piece of property, the one that grades the highest is one's going to get the first offer on it. And that's the way it's going to be. All right? Any questions on that? January 27th through January 30th, Gulf Council meeting we had. One of the things that is going forward with that is that, last year we took a gamble and tried to add a little extra to our red snapper. And we wound up going 18,000 pounds over and had to pay it back the next year. Well, now we're doing a bill that, we're trying to do a process there to be able to move it forward to where that if we, as a 5 states, Mississippi, Alabama, Louisiana, Florida, Texas, if we don't go over the ACL for the whole Gulf, then we can sit down as a council and decide if one goes over and the other's under, that we can allow that person to have those allocations. So it's something that we'll work back and forth, and I think it's great. They're doing it at South Atlantic, and I think it's a good deal, and I think it'll work out real good. And matter of fact, I'm going to the South Atlantic in March 3rd, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, in that time frame, to be able to meet with them, and I'm going to be the Gulf representative for the South Atlantic. So we're going to go there, and I'm going to listen to there and see what they're doing any different than we are. And maybe we can add something to theirs, and maybe they can add something that we can bring back. But our MS Krill is going forward. There's some issues in Washington right now. It's funding, as to whether or not they can give us funding to be able to pay for it. Well, we're going to take it out of Hyde because we're going forward. We're going forward with it until we get it, and then we'll just hope to get paid back, and that's what we're working on. But we're not going to back up. We're going to marry it up against their MREP, and we're going to do this study so we can come back and have our snapper back to where we ought to be in our reef fish. Any questions on that? All right, February 4th legislative dinner in Jackson. It was a good deal. We had a good deal. We had about 65, 70 people showed up for it. It was a good night. We were able to sit down and talk to a lot of different legislators about things that we needed to do and what we're looking at. And so for the amount of money, that is probably the best thing in the world, because we don't go to a big restaurant and pay for all the money. We do it at the co-op. We just do it ourselves. Our cooking team cooks for us. So it's it's a great deal. We just basically buy the food. That's all we have to do. February 5th, we had Capitol Day. Good turnout. Next year, we're going to try to do something different. They only allow you to have half of it now, one side of the rotunda. So what we're going to do is marry up with wildlife, and wildlife's going to take one side, and we're going to take the other. So we're going to take them all together. We're going to go in there as a joint deal, and so that's working out great. For the ones that don't know, that we are a member of the Mississippi Wildlife, Fisheries, Parks, and Marine Foundation now. So we're joined with them, and they made us an equal partner in the foundation to be able to raise money to be able to help people. One of our goals that we want to do with that is to be able to go forward with giving scholarships for students to go to the universities and that, to be able to study marine biology. We also want to do things to where we help with children and teach them about fishing. And we also want to do things with underprivileged and handicap and other things that we're doing. And we can't do that, but we can with the foundation money. And we're looking to have right now, we're trying to set the date, but I think it's going to be sometime in June. But we're looking at a tournament to have the Governor's Cup. And that'll be a fundraiser for us to be able to put money into it, that people will come in and help us pay for that. And so hopefully we'll be able to raise some money and be able to do that and use that to be able to help people to move forward. Any questions on that? All right. February 11th, 12th, we had the GOMA, Gulf of Mexico Alliance, and now Gulf of America Alliance, because we changed we couldn't change the name 100%, but we did change it doing business as Gulf of America, because President Trump named it Gulf of America the other day when he flew over to go into the Super Bowl. He signed the paperwork that says now the Gulf of America. So everybody better get on board there. We're going to have to learn new words, and we're going, instead of saying Gulf of Mexico, now we're Gulf of America. And so we will go forward with that, and we had a good meeting there, and some things are coming forward with it. February 24th through 26th, I'll be the Gulf States delegation. Myself and Rick Burris will be going to Washington, D.C., and we'll be meeting with NOAA and meeting with Wildlife and Fisheries, and then also meeting with congressmen and senators. So we're going to talk about where we're at, what we need, some of the things we're looking at, and how to go forward and to help us. Any questions on that? If you got anything, let me know. As I said, I'm going March 3rd through 7th to Atlantic Council. Bonnie Carey update. Let's see, I got it somewhere here. Okay, financial assistance to Mississippi commercial fishermen, seafood dealers, charter boat fishermen, businesses, funding was 7.94 million, and we spent 7.694 at this point. The commercial is 7.12 of it, and, the charter is 573,000 of it. Of the 94, second applicants received, 72 of them were found to be eligible, so we were able to do that. 72 applications have been submitted to finance for round 2 direct payment. This includes 66 commercial fishermen, 5 charters, and 1 dealer. The grant program for new and emerging seafood processing technology funding of 3.6 million. We've spent about 1.4 at this time. Payments have been approved for 8 of the 24 eligible applicants. Fishery staff is working to applicants at finance to be able to move forward to that. Any questions on Bonnie Carey? All right, let's see where else I'm at. Am I missing something else here? The derelict vessels. We have, at this point, 174 derelict vessel cases have been reported since we started tracking. 155 vessels removed, 19 vessels pending, and 7 received court orders for removal. Also, that wildlife fishery parks, the hunting and fishing license that you can go online and buy is on hold right now. They're changing the contractor. That happened today. The system's down maybe 1 to 2 days. Just keep an eye on it. Deer season's over, so turkey season hadn't started. So it shouldn't be an issue there other than your fishing license, but you can still come and buy them here. You can buy them manually. I think we can work it out to be able to buy a manual license if you need to. We can't? Okay, Patrick's shaking his head no. All right, we can't sell our marine license? Okay, so a couple of days, we're gonna be shut down. If you get in a situation about that, let me know, and we'll work it out, try to help you if you need something. It's something that your license expires today, and you still need to fish tomorrow, okay? Just let me know. But if it's a commercial license, that doesn't go through Wildlife Fishing Park. So if it's commercial, you're okay, all right? We can do that for seafood commercial license. All right, am I missing anything? Let's see what else I got down this list here. I don't think I see anything on that. Now we go to actions update.
Morning, Director and Commissioner.
Morning, Director and Commissioners. Discussed at the January 2025 meeting, the Commission recommended and the Director approved a motion to recommend approval of the following state saltwater finfish records. That was one for a 15.16 ounce common snook caught by Vin Trey on conventional tackle, and an 8.96 ounce common snook caught by Zachary Broussard under youth conventional tackle. And that is all the actions update we have for this week.
Okay, any questions? Not, Mr. Chairman, that has my report.
All right, thank you, sir. Commissioners, do you guys have anything to report today? All right, we'll move on to Chief Wilkerson, report on citations.
Good morning. Everybody doing well? Well, the report itself, it was going to be the January report. It looks to be that everybody was compliant. There were a few citations written, but nothing that just stands out to me. A little less checks due to the fact that all that cold weather. Unfortunately, nobody likes to be on the water when it's cold, except these oarsmen. They like to be out there. I don't like chasing them when it's that cold. But anyway, if you have any questions, please feel free to ask, and I will answer what I can.
Questions? Thank you very much, Chief.
What we got is Deputy Chief Jex is under the weather. He was going to present a no-wake zone, but Captain Strickland is going to present it today.
Okay, thank you.
Good morning. Sure, light's still on. As I mentioned, Deputy Chief's a little under the weather today, so he asked me to step in and fill in for the no wake proposal for Wolf River at the Minja Avenue. If you go to the next slide, You can see the existing wake zone on the northern extension part from the boat ramp there that's in place. By statute is 100 feet out adjacent from any public launching facility. What they've asked is that wake zone be extended to the southernmost portion down to the bridge, and that's covering a new launch that's being developed. If you look at the slide there where it's cleared, the southernmost portion of the clearing, there is a new boat ramp that's gone in right there. And what's taking place is when people are transiting the river and they're heading north and they come up under the bridge, it actually creates a little bit of a blind spot because of the natural curve of the river. And by the time the people notice that the ramp is there or people are actually launching their facility and they come down, that weight that's created by them decreasing the speed is probably greater than had they just been able to transit the system and originally. So what they've asked for is for that no wake zone to extend down to the southern portion of the bridge for the safety of the people launching the vessels there. If you go to the next slide, look at the considerations. So boaters will be operating idle speed for approximately 3 minutes. It's all it's going to add to the transit time. Special considerations, including the bridge and the no wake zone, would ensure higher safety precautions transiting between bridge pylons and around blind spot where boaters would be launching and recovering their vessels. The no wake zone proposal is an extension of an already existing no wake zone that is required by state law, which was 100 feet adjacent to all public launching facilities. And the total length of the no wake zone is 992 feet at the center line of the river. Next. So staff recommendation is the Office of Marine Patrol requests that the commission recommend to the director approval of the establishment of a no wake zone for the proposed Wolf River Bridge and boat launch at Minge Avenue based on normal operation and vessel speed in relation to the public access areas in which people fish, boat, and socialize.
We have any questions?
There's a high traffic area there, and it is a blind spot there, so I think that 3 minutes is more like 9 though, because nobody's getting up and running where those camps are. You might get shot at if you do.
Yeah, it looks, safety wise, it definitely looks warranted to me. Do we have a motion to approve and move forward with the staff's recommendation?
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, moving down to resource management. Looks like Willa.
Good morning. I have a quick update on our numbers for the year. So these are all of our permitting actions for the calendar year of 2024. As you can see, we had a total number of actions of 813. Most of those are things that we either regulate directly or that happen within the coastal zone that we have to review to make sure they are consistent with our coastal program. Comparing to the last 2 years, just to show that our numbers are staying pretty steady lately. We did go down just a little bit in our regulated activities, but we also went up in things that we review and pre-application meetings that we hold with people getting ready to turn in their applications. Our violations stayed about the same as last year. We did have a few less actual violations. We like to put our actual number up there because we get a lot of reports that when we get to the field, they don't actually turn out to be violations. So out of those 22 actual violations, 5 of those were things that would have met our guidelines. Had they turned in an application, we would have issued it. So those were issued and approved under an after the fact process by the director. The rest were taken care of by the property owner themselves voluntarily and fixed. Did want to point out that only 16 of the 47 were in the last 6 months. So hopefully we're starting to go down a little bit on our numbers there. And we didn't have any that needed to be presented to the commission for a recommendation. So we are happy with that. If you have any questions, just let me know.
I don't. Thank you very much, Miss Willa.
Thank you.
Yeah, one thing, one of the things in the past, we've had some issues and it worked out, but Secretary of State stepped up with us the other day, and there was an issue with that county and about a being put in the wrong place, and we got Secretary of State, but Secretary of State did go forward with it, so now they're pursuing it to be able to change it, and it looks like everything is going forward. I don't know where we're at yet or not, but I think that the contractor and all are coming back to get with us to be able to do it. So Secretary Watson, thank you very much for your help on that.
They're supposed to be turning in an application for that restoration work, and we probably, once that is finished, we'll present that to the commission, just because the original was presented to the commission. So we'll follow up with that and let you know what the final result is.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, looks like we have a Reef Borough permit. Miss Allison.
Good morning. So we have an application by the City Department of Reef Borough. The proposed project is located 2 miles north of Petty Island in Mississippi. It's in the general use district. The project need and purpose is to create and enhance valuable reef habitat that will support and sustain healthy populations of estuarine fish and other invertebrates. So the applicant is proposing to fill approximately 50 acres of coastal wetlands for the construction of a submerged artificial reef. The reef will consist of ecosystem discs, concrete culverts, and other material. The reef will maintain a minimum clearance of 12 feet mean low water as requested by the Coast Guard, which I will cover in a later slide. This is a diagram or layout of the proposed project. The EcoDisc system on the left just kind of shows a generic layout of what it could approximately look like. This is approximately 200 units. The ecosystem discs are the ones in the top right, as well as the picture of the concrete culverts of what this could potentially look like for them. This is the project location with the coordinates. Again, this is approximately 2 miles north of Petty Boy Island there. The applicant is requesting a variance to the requirements for filling of coastal wetlands, and they've justified the variance by stating that the location of the proposed artificial reef site avoids coastal vegetation. It's going to add habitat for the flora and fauna, and will add an overall positive effect for fishermen and the ecosystem itself. Notification of the project ran in the Sun Herald on January 11th, 19th, and 26th of this year. It also appeared on the Mississippi Department of Marine Resources website on January 10th and ran to February 3rd of this year. We did not receive any public comments to our notice, but the Army Corps of Engineers received comments on their public notice, which will be in the next slide. There were no comments from MDEQ or MDAH, and the Secretary of State's office stated no comment on this application. The U.S. Army Corps of Engineers posted their public notice. They received 3 comments. The U.S. Coast Guard requested a 12-foot minimum clearance, and the reef must be marked on all corners of private aids to navigation. This was opposed to the original application that was going to propose an 8-foot clearance. Because of the high-trafficked area, the Coast Guard has requested a 12-foot minimum low-water clearance, and the DMR staff has responded and said that they will meet that 12-foot minimum clearance. The U.S. EPA asked if there was a more recent version of the 1999 Artificial Reef Development Plan, and was the purpose for the reef for mitigation or restoration to improve habitat. The U.S. Army Corps of Engineers project manager responded to the comment on behalf of the applicant that the 1999 Development Plan is the most recent, and that the reef is not for mitigation. The primary purpose is to provide hard substrate to improve habitat and water quality for state resources. The Gulf Intercoastal Waterway also commented and asked if there was a concern that the structures may pose a navigation threat if they are potentially dislodged by a hurricane and be deposited into the federal channel. And was the design and location taking this risk into consideration? And if so, how would it be mitigated? The DMR applicant did respond, stating that the location is over 3,700 feet from the intercoastal waterway, and there had been studies conducted and concluded that no indicated displacement of reef materials would happen. Therefore, the staff, after a thorough evaluation of the project based on the decision factors in the Mississippi Coastal Program, the project would serve a higher public interest by enhancing the fishing opportunities and provide a quality fishing site. It would provide a quality habitat to promote successful species transitions from juvenile to maturity, and it avoids biologically sensitive areas. Therefore, staff requests a motion that the commission recommend to the executive director to approve the requested variance, to approve the permit as requested, and condition the permit to contain the following: that the coordination with the U.S. Coast Guard for necessary aids to navigation at the project location be conditioned. Any questions?
Who is the actual applicant funding?
Um,
And funding?
It's Artificial Reef Bureau.
Okay.
Might say Travis was.
The
Here.
picture of the discs, is that 5 discs stacked on top of each other, or do the 5, is that one unit?
That's all one unit. They're stacked together, 5 discs, approximately 5 foot high with a base 5 by 5.
Okay, that's pretty cool.
Cam, did you ask about the funding?
Yeah, I was just curious where the
So the funding for this project right now is proposed. We're putting in an application with NIFWF funds, National Fish and Wildlife Foundation funds.
I think it's great, by the way. I think it's a great program. I like the location too. So
Yeah, we tried to look at something on the east side of the state, and help those folks out over there. So.
for sure. Any other questions, commissioners? All right. Well, do we have a motion to take the recommendation from the staff?
Motion to take the recommendation from staff.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. All right, looks like we're moving on down to the public affairs. Ms. Charmaine.
Good morning. The Mississippi Department of Marine Resources had 9 media mentions since the January MACMR meeting. News items included the seafood labeling law proposed in Mississippi, Mississippi's oyster reefs, and the effects of the winter storm on inshore fish. On February 5th, DMR held our annual Capitol Day in Jackson, where we met with legislators, Capitol staff, and guests throughout the morning, handing out informational pieces about our agency. Blake Stringfellow in the Shellfish Bureau took part in Jumpstart to Success in Hattiesburg on February 4th. Blake talked about his role at the agency, answered questions, and talked about the career path for biologists at DMR. The event featured over 2,000 students from the Hattiesburg area who were able to explore a variety of careers. At this weekend's Biloxi Boat Show, the Artificial Reef Bureau staffed the agency's public outreach booth each of the 3 days of the show at the Mississippi Coast Convention Center. They shared insight on fishing reefs and fisheries management, as well as handing out DMR informational materials. Marine Patrol, Coastal Resources Management's Invasive Species Program, and the Grand Bay Near participated in the Kids Fishing 101 program during the boat show. Each group featured a booth at the event and educated attendees about their respective roles and programs at DMR. Additionally, the Hatchery Bureau provided Mississippi Gulf fishing banks with 8 hatchery-reared spotted sea trout, around 8 to 10 inches each, for their display at the show.
Thank you for all the help with the kids event at the boat show this weekend. It was a huge success.
Awesome.
It's great to see you guys, everybody involved as much as you are for that. So we appreciate it, Ms. Charmaine. Thank you.
Welcome.
All right, moving down to marine fisheries. Looks like Jason Ryder on this oyster update.
Good morning, everyone. I wanted to give a quick update regarding the season, and then I'll talk about some sampling efforts that we had at the agency. So first off, as we do every month recently, quick update. The season did open on January 15th. It has been open since then. We have been closed a decent amount due to river and rainfall, but we're trying to keep it open as much as possible. And we are, that's all right. The season total right now is 7,371 sacks of oysters. Average sacks per day is 136. Licenses are ticking up. We are seeing interest from in-state and out-of-state for licensed sales. We're continuing with those. If anyone wants to purchase a license and needs the harvester training class, we're available at any time, so give us a call. Approximate number of licenses harvesting is 80, and then what the average number per day is 10 for tongers and 12 for dredgers. The main area fished is continuing to be 2F, which is around the Tongan box, close to Pascagoula. So with that, I did want to talk about last commission meeting. Director asked to look into some sampling efforts in the past and where we've been, what we've done. So I wanted to brief everyone with some maps and graphs and go over anything and answer any questions. So first off, this is the sampling efforts from 2019 to 2024. As you can see on this map, all gold and or black dots are where we have sampled. The black dots are from 2019 to 2022, and then the gold dots are from 23 and 24. The reason we did that is because in 23 we transitioned from sampling everything to sampling only state-owned reefs. So the gold dots do indicate, or gold or yellow dots do indicate
Hey, Jason, before you go forward, that
Yep.
when you say state owns all of them still.
Correct.
But this was what was projected out of that bill that the state would own. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
So the
just
blue
make it-
areas.
Just to
we-
clarify.
Yeah, thank you, Director. The blue areas are where we focused our efforts in 2023 and 24. As you can see at the bottom of that chart, we sampled a total of 2,298 samples, and in the years we broke it down. So with this, we wanted to show that we did have a good distribution over the reefs and over the western complex. We did focus this slide just on the west. We do have Biloxi in the east also. But if anyone has any questions about that, we can answer that. Next is this is just a quick snapshot of our efforts with a live dead map. So a green indicates a live oyster in our sampling, and red indicates no live oysters. So from 20, and we're just looking at from Bonnie Carey to 2022. And the reason we did this is because in 2017 to 2022, we had some poor conditions for water quality. We had a lot of rainfall, Bonnie Carey openings. The environmental conditions were not ideal during those times. So 2019 to 2022, sampling efforts, we do show some growth on our culture plants is mainly where we're seeing it. If you look at the map here, every box or polygon that you see is a culture plant that the DMR has deployed in the Western Sound. So we are seeing some growth over these years, but nothing substantial at this time. And then if you look at this one, this is a total from 2019 to 2024. So you're really looking at the difference between 22 and 24. From that time period, we've had tremendous water quality conditions. The temperature's been right, salinity's been right, water quality's been right. We have not had a heavy rainfall or Bonnie Carey opening, so the oysters have had a chance to rebound. What we're trying to show here is that it was growing substantially in this I'm going to go back to the 2019 to 22. It was growing in that time frame, but then in 22 to 24, we really saw exponential growth on our culture plants. We have sampled again on the blue areas. That's where we focused in this time frame. We did not sample outside of the blue areas from 23 and 24. But if you look at this map or this area, you can apply the same logic to the gray historic reef footprint. And then this is just a chart.
Real quick on
sorry.
that, before we go any further with that, what you want to understand is they were going back and they were doing and checking. Now, what you say, why did you only go to those areas? Because in 2023, there was a bill passed that said that we would lease 80% of the bottoms. Right. And so we didn't look at it. We thought it was going forward. We did go out and do contracts or look at contracts. We didn't do any actual contracts because we saw something with the grading criteria on it. And so we went back and said, okay, we got a grading criteria issue here, so we can't go forward with that. But that's why that we were looking at those areas back those days. And then we turned around and in 24, they passed another legislation, and it was signed to say we would release it, and that's when we're going forward at this point. But want people to understand, we didn't stop looking at that just because we didn't want to look at it. We stopped looking at it because we were under the impression that the state was going to lease 80% of the bottoms, and we didn't have any choice. And that's what we're going to do. So that's what we looked at in that point. So when you got some more slides, and I'll let you go through them before we talk about that.
And to that point, Director, we did stop outside of the blue area because we wanted to continue with culture plants inside of that area. We wanted to identify good quality locations. So we focused our efforts in those areas, sampling efforts. So this is just an estimated harvest graph, estimated oyster sacks versus harvested. And this goes all the way back to 98 and 99. If you can see in the early 2000s, 99 to 2000, we were over 1 million sacks of oysters that we had estimated in the Western Mississippi Sound. We were harvesting around 400,000 sacks. And then in 05, of course, it's coming down. It does significantly go down in that time frame. It picks back up. But if you see the graph and the trend, I just wanted to show you a scale of where we're at compared to where we've been. We are seeing an uptick, and I think it's great that we're seeing an uptick. We're showing about 50,000 sacks, estimated sacks on the state-owned reefs or the blue areas. So again, we did not sample outside of those blue areas in 23 or 24. So you can take that estimate and apply it to the other areas. We are seeing an uptick, but overall, against where we are historically, we're still very far down, and we want to harvest these oysters responsibly. We don't want to inhibit them from growing and expanding. That's our goal here, is to harvest this season responsibly, take some oysters, allow people to harvest, but also allow it to continue to rebound and continue to grow. So this just shows a pretty good overview from the last 25 years. And if anyone has any questions with that, I will take them. This is the same, but just in a different chart, different way to look at it. But yeah, any questions?
Great job on laying it out like that, giving a visual and the documentation. That's really clear.
Okay.
And, just to give you an idea, obviously, Jason, can you pull that slide back up about just one that shows the pictures of the oysters there, right in that area? If you look at the areas that are marked in blue that we're checked off, that's the areas that the state is going to, under the new legislation that's been passed last year, that's the areas that the state would keep on the Western Sound. Now, there's areas on the Eastern Sound too, some areas over there that we're keeping. But that's the areas we're talking about. Over the last 3 years, that's where we put all of our efforts out.
That's right.
That's where we put every bit of our efforts. And then when I say efforts, that's where we put our cults. That's where we put our seed oysters. And to give you an idea too, and I don't know, Jason, maybe you do, but we bought back in 2021, I think it was, that we bought 1 million oysters from Texas.
Yeah. That
were market size, and we put them in those areas, right?
Yeah, we did. We put some, and it was before these blue areas were identified. So we did put some in the Pass Christian area. I believe it's right in this area, and then we did put some in St. Joe at the time.
Yeah, but we put those oysters in there to help because we had nothing to seed the Gulf with. And so we bought market-size oysters and put them in there to be able to help them to be able to move forward. And that was our idea. How could we rebuild this the best way we could possibly do? I know some of you are catching some, and especially at the first part of the season when we opened in November, we were allowing you to fish on the ones that are in the blue. And I know you was catching some big oysters. Well, a lot of those probably came from that same way because they came from that same area. Whenever you put a 3-inch oyster in there, 2 years later, it's going to be a lot bigger. And a lot of them were probably in that point. But as Jason said, we have had the luxury of having, especially the last year. This past year, the water has been beautiful, and that's why we looked at this. We looked at it last year as to whether or not we could open, but from the sampling that was done and the way that the the scientists looked at it. They felt that it was a little bit early to open up last year because of, we didn't want to take a chance of degrading whatever the reefs were at the time. So whenever you go back and look at that and you think about it, I want you to understand that, put that slide back up there I had a while ago. Yeah, right there. All right. You see the blue area, and you see every one of us, we all know where most of you have been fishing. I think it's been in the past, Marianne, and then the Henderson Point area, up in that area, right in there. That's where you've been fishing here in the last few weeks, and when we've had it. Now, we did caught some of that. We did seed some of that prior to 2022, right? But that was the time that we did it. And then after that, we stopped doing it and started looking at ours. Now, there is, and also, and the way this thing is set up, the reason we picked the areas that we picked was to be able to most productive and be able to move those oysters and obviously the spawn and being able to feed the whole estuary. That was what they were looking at. Our initial goal was to keep all of Pass Marianne and all of the Pass Christie and the Henderson Point in that area, but it didn't work out that way. That was our initial goal, what we wanted to keep it all, because we know what that is. All right. If you go down to Telegraph has not been very productive over the years, and from just talking to the staff, it has not been a very productive oyster reef over the years because of a lot of different things have killed it. A lot of things have happened, but we didn't put a whole lot of effort in there. We did put some effort in St. Joe, though, right? And
Yeah.
we did put some effort there, and St. Stanislaus a little effort and some other stuff in that area. But the idea it was and whenever in December when I shut off the areas that you see in the blue, I shut it off for one reason. Because if we do go forward with these leases, and it does go forward and it happens, and that area that you're seeing in the not the blue, but in the Pass Marianne and Pass Christian, that area, if it is leased out, I wanted y'all to fish off of that area. I wanted you to fish off of that area right now and get what you could there, and then hold the other areas for you. And if for maybe if we do look at it and if this goes through, and just say it goes through in March, and we can still harvest oysters in March, we can open up maybe our season in our area, and then next year we'll have your area there, and we'll be able to open it up for that. That's what we're working for. I'm trying to find every way in the world I can to find a way to make sure that we can still have an oyster season for our oystermen, our commercial oystermen here in the state. And I'm trying to find a way. But that's what we're working on right now. And that's exactly what I've done. So if you got any questions of why I'm not letting you, fish those areas right now, it's to save them for you for the next, in maybe next month or whatever, if it goes through. And why not let's fish the areas that we've already put some type of resources in, and why not let's go ahead and in case they do lease them out. If they do lease them out, then at least we fished some of it and we got some of it for that. But that's what I'm looking at. So I want you to understand we're trying every way we can.
Yep.
And once these leases go out, if we do go forward with it and just say the leases and some of that brown area or gray area you want to look at there is not leased, it will still stay a state-owned land. It's not going anywhere else, okay? It will still stay a state-owned on those reefs if it's not leased out. So, at that point, the senator asked me the other day, and they were talking about it, and they said, well, can we just say that will continue to be? And I said, that's up to you, because you wrote, they wrote the law, I didn't. So if they want to say that, then I'm all for that. It took me to death. They want to say, yes, these go back and not going to be leased. I'll be fine with that. And so that's what I'm working on. And I just want you to understand a little bit more about why they put the efforts in the places they did, and why we only sampled in the places that we sampled in the last couple of years, and then why we closed the season to the areas that you were catching so many of them right at one time, but they're still not going anywhere. Those oysters are still there, and they're still owned by the state of Mississippi, and so they will still be a public reef. and we were able to harvest them. Does that make any, Jason, anything you want to add to that?
No, I think you summarized it pretty well.
Commissioners, y'all got any?
Nope, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Guess we'll move to,
Before you go to the next side, yeah, he wants to do the public
we'll do
comment.
the public comments. Yeah. All right, first up is, A. Miller, possibly. I can't 100% understand
Catfish?
it. The 30 something
Yeah, it's
Avenue?
catfish probably.
Okay.
Yeah.
Please, 3 minutes, if you could keep within that time frame. Just state your name and city.
James Miller, Dialville, Mississippi. Been fishing all my life since I've been 7 years old, Mr. Spraggs. Now I know what the Indians feel like when the white man shoved a railroad down their throat. You're taking our land from us, and I'm upset. Can't even hardly talk to you today. If you're so worried about our resources, you ought to be fighting for us up there in the legislature. I've been up there with you, man. Pig in a blanket up there, man. I'm so mad right now, I'm shaking, Spraggs. Totally upset at you. I feel like you've done a bad job taking our livelihood from us. You want to save oysters. I'm trying to pay my bills. Just got a boat back running. I went on that reef. First time I trolled on that reef was Saturday. Hour and 35 minutes, I had the prettiest oysters you'd ever want to lay a human eye on. I don't know what the problem is. You don't want to keep it open. You want to keep closing. You want to claim this. You want to claim up to Sackland because we're starving down there. I can't believe you're trying to lease out 80% of our ground to these millionaire leaseholders. You're shoving them down our throat. I hope we can do something about it, sir, because we're working on it. Just like you said, oh, I'm all for the fishermen. I pray you are. I too, man. Because what you've done to us, Mr. Galot died, and I knew this was coming, shoving this lease down our throat. I pray that man was on that board today, right now. He wouldn't let none of this happen. I'm so sad that we got to come up here and fight for our grounds that's been out there since the 1900s. I'm at loss for words. You're supposed to be protecting our product, not giving it to the millionaires, man. And that list you say you got, man, do you want me to get my phone out for y'all and see who's all on the list? Wow, I got the list. And there ain't a damn fisherman on it. Not one of us, a license holder. All you millionaires out there is on there. Do you want me to start naming the names? Boy, it hurt me. I don't want to sit up here and beat people up over it, but I got the list in my pocket on my phone. And it ain't us. And I don't want to lease. I don't want to lease none of our ground down there. I want to work on our ground to make a living. Not come up here and beg for y'all not to do something, man. You should have our back. Everybody on this board. And Mr. Richard Galot, you're looking at that clock, it's running. My time's run out. I know what you're looking at. You have a nice day, Spraggs.
Mr. Miller, I understand you and I understand what you're saying, but I don't think you've been up there with me fighting it the way I fought it. And you're saying you've been up there 2 times that I've seen y'all there, but I am not going to fight in the middle of a meeting that they're having for the resource meeting or whatever, because that's not the time and place to do it. It doesn't work that way in Jackson. They won't do anything. They won't listen to it. The fight was before that. And the fight was whenever you're sitting there and you're talking to the people and you're talking to the legislators and you're trying to get them to understand what you want. But when there's one thing I'm going to tell you, and you can think about me ever how you want to, and that's your privilege.
I don't
right?
hate you, sir. Not one bit. I'm not like that. I'm not a hater.
But
I just think you could have done a better job for a fisherman.
Well, you can think the way you want to on that, and that's your privilege, okay?
Yes, sir.
But you've not been there with me, and you've not been in the fight I've been in, and you've not seen what I've done But I also understand two things. I understand that the legislature set the rules for the state of Mississippi, and I, as a director of as a Department of Marine Resources, will follow those rules because that's what I am here for. Now, if there's a way that we can change them, I'm all for it. Let's go for it and look at it. But for people to try to tell me that they didn't know about this, they're not telling the truth. They
Well,
knew about this.
I've been a
and y'all
license
knew what
holder.
was going on.
Listen, I've been a license holder for a long time. Why did you send a letter to my mailbox?
Why didn't you?
Hey, look, I don't have a computer. Why did you send a license
letter?
to
Why didn't I send a letter to
everybody that owns the
everybody
license?
that does shrimp? Why didn't I send them that does finfish?
This is
Why
about
didn't I do them
oysters.
that does crabs? Why didn't I do it every time we change any rules? That's what it's for. You know, Mr. Miller, you knew about it.
You're wrong.
Well, I don't see how you didn't.
You're wrong, sir. I'd have been up here complaining then.
Well, I don't see how you didn't know about it.
I
Because
didn't.
I was told the other day that a lot of the people, the oystermen themselves, came up here and sat down with our staff and talked to them. And they sat down and talked to them about it. They just didn't feel like they could qualify financially. But not a single one ever called me and said, hey, can you help me try to change this because this is the way we do it. They one ever, you know, this is a two-way street, sir. Why didn't you pick up the phone and call me?
Call you all the time.
Oh, yeah, I talked to
I call you all the time, so why didn't you call back?
Well, you didn't call me lately. Oh,
Okay, well, what you mean I didn't call?
well, I didn't
called.
know it. Okay.
I don't hate you. I told you. I just think that you've done a poor job as
This is a
fishermen.
two-way street, so you can do it the same.
It ain't a
way, sir.
one-way street.
We're gonna walk out of here shaking hands, but we
Oh,
not
absolutely.
like each other.
Absolutely.
We do.
I'm not hating on you.
All right, buddy. Thank you.
Yeah. You have a nice day.
Thank you. Next up is Jimmy. Okay. Thank you. Rowell, Rowell, it appears. Yep. Okay. All right. Mr. John Livings. Name and city.
John Livings, Pasture Stand, Mississippi. I was just coming to see about the reef, but you had mentioned if you was wanting to do it later, I was going to make sure we still going to try to stay to the 18,000 sacks and then reassess it. Is that the plan?
Sorry, what did you hear?
For the oyster season, we still sticking to the 18,000 sacks before it closes down? Okay.
Not, you know, we're not changing our numbers. That's not what we're trying to do. I mean, we're looking at it right now. What we're at 8,000, 7,000 something.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you know, we're not even halfway there. So if the problem has happened, Mr. Livings, is the weather hadn't incorporated a whole
Right.
lot. You know what I'm talking about with the rivers and everything else. And once that river crests to a certain point, you know, we have to. Once it gets above a certain point, we have to. And so at that point, we try to go back and sample every way to open it back up. I don't have a problem doing it February and March. I don't think there's a problem one in March of harvesting oysters.
Even April, we used to
Even
work in
April,
April.
yes, sir. I don't have a problem one with that.
Well, I think another thing we may ought to look at is our Pearl River stage because everything's based on Pearl River. But everyone here knows that since Katrina, the marsh is gone. So that water that's coming out is not diverting like it used to. It goes out through 3 Mile now. And so maybe the 11 feet's not where we need to be. Maybe it
And
needs to be
I have
14,
addressed that.
15
Me and
feet.
you talked about that other day, and I have addressed that with the staff, and they're looking into it now. And the question is, how can we do something to get it changed? And we're going to look at it. It's not going to be a simple thing, so it won't change in the next 24 hours or 2 months, but it'll take something. But we are looking at it, and we're trying to decide what we could do. Could we lower that number? Could we make it work? And so, you know, to where, in other words, raise the height as far as, instead of 11'1", maybe we can go to 12 foot. Maybe we can go to 12.6. Maybe we can go to something else.
Used to be 14 way back.
But I'm just saying a number. Maybe we can put a number up there. But that's what we are looking at, sir. We did not turn away from that. We're looking at it to see if there's a way to do it.
Right. And like the southern reefs that we talked about, like Telegraph, I believe that's why they're not growing, because the
Yeah.
marsh is gone. It's not getting the fresh water that it needs. That's why the shells are deteriorating.
And I got a thing here. I know me and you talked about the Long Beach Reef.
Hmm.
You remember we talked about it, and why? And I got a thing, and basically, the area has been unclassified since 2006, and the reclassification primarily resulted from the lack of harvestable resources. And the reef assessment from 2006 to 2010 show spat settlement in the area. However, only 4% survived to the market size during that time. Rick, you're sitting there. You help me with this. Come up and talk to him real quick, because I want him to understand that we did look into this hard for you, okay?
Okay.
And we not going to take it off your 3 minutes.
Yeah, there was some confusion on that, and we went and looked back at it, and it was 2006. A lot whenever the area was reclassified. And I want to say it hadn't been harvested since then because it was reclassified. But we've looked at the area. We hadn't found any sign of any growth on it, and we think the cause for the lack of resource on it is, I think, after Katrina, there was some discharge from Long Beach, from the USM Long Beach campus that was cut off, and so there wasn't any fresh water getting over there to keep these oysters. The oysters that were there thriving. So it's pretty much been a dead reef since about 2006.
And we
I
did
think
go
it was
and we did go and dive it the other day, right? Or drag, didn't we test it the other day?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, and we didn't see any oysters over there, so we did go look at it.
Yeah, I worked it before they cultivated it. In 2004 is when it was good. That's when the reef was destroyed.
And it was reclassified. Once it's reclassified to unclassified, you can't open it up for harvest because
Right.
you don't have that data.
Okay.
Okay.
My other question was, I don't want to beat you up, but I'm kind of confused. I don't understand why you're not more on our side. When we were in Jackson, you seemed like you were really perturbed at us. You didn't speak to us much other than just say there was nothing on Telegraph. But I mean, in my mind, you should be our biggest fighter. Everything we're fighting for keeps you in power.
Well, sir, you got to understand a couple of things. When I learned a lesson years ago, when people start throwing hatchets at you, you stop and get your facts before you go back and try to ask it.
I never threw a hatchet.
No.
Right.
All right, that's number one. And number two, I had a budget meeting 20 minutes after that thing started, so I was in a high rush to head there, and I had to do that. So we had a budget for the agency to still operate.
I get that. I get that.
But I did not. And the point is, that was not the time or place to do that. The time or place would have been for y'all to sit down and maybe say, hey, can we all get together? Can we get a few legislators with us as a part of this and sit down and just have a private meeting on this and not and talk about it and let them understand it? That's the way they work it up there. If you want to get something done, that's the way. Because you can go up there and bring a mess or whoever, they're going to walk away from it. Give them a chance to sit down. Because if they get caught blindsided, they're not going to listen to it either because they don't know. They're going to listen, but they're not going to what to tell you.
Yeah.
And so sit down, have a private meeting with them, ask for them to have a private meeting, sit down with them and talk to them. Like y'all did, had Senator Thompson and them there, and y'all had a meeting, in Pass Christiana somewhere. I don't remember where exactly it was. I wasn't able to be here. I was out of town. But anyway, y'all had a private meeting and talked about it. That's the way to do it, and talk to them that way, because if you go storming in there, they're not going to, they're going to listen, but there's not much they can do.
Well, being that you left it pretty quick, Mike Thompson actually come to us and stopped us, and we had a meeting up there with him.
Great.
And I'd like for you to have been in there with it.
I wished I could. I didn't know about it.
But yeah, he actually come to us. So it worked what we did by going up there.
Yeah, but I mean, the point of me is going up there, I'm not telling you not to do.
Right.
What I'm saying is get it all organized before you walk in there and sit down and see if you can get some meetings with some people.
Tell you the truth, our purpose of going up there was not telling y'all is because we didn't want them to come up with something else against us. That was the purpose of not telling them.
Okay, well, and I don't think that
and it worked because we did get a meeting with him.
I don't think there was anything up there that they were going to bring up. Any different, and they only have, you got to understand too, when they do those things and they have a meeting, they have an agenda for that meeting, and that's what they're going to bring up.
Yeah.
And when y'all went to the Senate, I was there with you. I saw you sat there. I didn't even open my mouth to anything in the Senate, did I? Because I wasn't asked any questions. And so I didn't open my mouth, and neither did one of y'all, because I think it was all sitting there. Y'all were listening.
Yep.
You
It
wanted
was
to see
after.
were they going to bring this bill out.
Yeah. He
But-
spoke to us after that one.
Yeah, they were
also.
going to bring that bill out anyway because we'd already talked to them. They told us they were. And but the point I'm getting at is just be a little bit, call them, talk to them, ask them to come sit with you, ask them to do it. They don't mind doing that. They'll do it with you. Talk to them, and because that's who you need to. You need to have a good conversation with them to where you're sitting down in an organized fashion, and tell them why you're thinking what you're thinking, but do two things. Also have your facts together.
That's right.
And
well,
also,
I didn't mean to cut you off.
and also have your facts together, and also make sure you're telling the truth.
That's right.
You know, because when you embellish something, they'll find out, and then it'll just be like, you know, same way you are. When somebody talks to you, and they ask you, and they tell you something, you listen to them. First off, is this 100% they're telling you the truth, don't you? And then after that, if you find out they didn't, you got a little different opinion of them.
Right.
Because you know if they deliberately did. Now, if they didn't know it, that's one thing. If they didn't understand why they were saying what they said, that's a different story. Because a lot of people talk about something they just know the facts. All they know is what they know at that point. But if they know that they have, just like when they'll come in here the other day and people trying to tell me that y'all knew nothing about this for 3 years, and then I come to find out that there's a bunch of you that had went and actually sat down with our staff and others and talked about it.
Who was it? I don't know any fishermen.
I don't
that
know,
said.
but you can. The point I'm getting at is, don't lie to me. I'm not gonna lie to you.
Yeah. Well, I can promise you, I didn't lie to you.
Okay.
Sir, if you come spend one day with me, you'll see I didn't.
I'm
lie.
not. I'm not
I
arguing
work
that.
from 6
and,
in the morning
and
to
I'm
about
not
9 at
arguing
night.
that. But you know, I think there's two things that if I had to make a decision on, if I was asking you what you ought to do right now, number one is you ought to still talk to your legislators. Okay. I can't do it.
Right. But your voice is more than ours.
Well,
you could
my
work with
voice
us
has
and
been there.
not be against us.
Hey, my voice has been there. As I told Mr. Miller, my voice has been there.
Right.
And this staff can tell you my voice has been there. But it didn't win.
Right. Well, maybe we all need to get together and go with you.
But
back you to
there's
fight for it.
There's an option too that we can look at that we could possibly even do better, and we could take care of the fishermen.
Yeah. Well,
Now, I know, and I'm not going to tell you something I can't tell you the truth
That's
on
right.
right now, okay? But I'm working on something right now.
Yeah, but I mean, still, it's
I
the
understand,
whole
sir.
goal of DMR is to protect the resource.
And that's exactly
It's not to say, hey, every director in the past took care of this reef, and now all of a sudden we're going to lay down and give it away. No. I mean, we will fight with you if that's what you really want to
Let's
do.
fight
Because
together.
what we seen up there said that you was for the lease.
No, what I told them was hey, it's just like anything else. When you sit down and you look at it and you know that the battle's here, and if I am not the one that brought the lease up.
Right. But you could have opposed it at that
I
time.
did.
Well,
And then whenever I talked about, and I told you, I went back and even talked about the resources that you're so concerned about, really, the main resources that you're concerned about. A lot of them, I sat down and told them, why in the world would we do this? Why would we go forward with this? Why would we give resources away that we've already put assets to? Why
Right.
would we do any of that? And I fought that battle, and their answer came back. And you can talk to the staff. We started out with numbers, and it just kept getting to this point, and we come out of there with 20%, and that was what we came out of there with. And then the only good part about it is, we asked for some of the 20% to be different than what we got, and we didn't get it.
yeah, well, the legislature is not telling the truth either, because they told us to our face that you was only willing to keep 20%.
That's not true.
That you wanted to lease it all out.
Well, I don't know which
That's what they
legislator
told
said
us.
that, but I don't
But
think that's
that
true.
it was Mike.
Well, I don't want to disagree with Senator Thompson,
No.
but I will look at him, and he knows that I did not say that's all I wanted to keep.
Right. I'm just telling you what he told us. So, when you tell
And
us something,
he may have been saying that I agreed to the 20%, because I did. I didn't have a choice at that point.
well, I mean, you weren't there, but yeah, that's not what he
Okay,
said.
well, and once again, we'll work at it. I met with y'all last time. I told you, I said, just go back and talk to them more but do it organized.
Yeah. Well, we were kind of led to go there by, I'm not going to say his name, but he told us to get proof and have everything in order and then come with a bunch of fishermen and he would stop this. And
Well,
he
I don't
didn't
know
do
who-
anything he said he was going to do.
I don't
And
know
we
who said
provided
that.
him with everything that
But
what he asked for.
Yeah, y'all work that yourself, but,
Right. But that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
We could work it together and maybe
Yeah,
get a
let's
lot
be
more
organized.
done. If you really want to keep the reef, we're willing to do whatever you need to do from
Okay.
us to go
Let's-
fight with you.
let's go back together. and get organized.
Thank you.
All right. Mr. Ryan Bradley, name and city, please.
Ryan Bradley, Long Beach. I'm the executive director of Mississippi Commercial Fisheries United. And these comments in regards to this private leasing program. The majority of Mississippi's commercial oyster fishermen and our members continue to oppose the private leasing of our historic natural bottom public oyster reefs. To your point about working with the lawmakers and getting with them ahead of time, we did sit down with several of them ahead of time before we went up to Jackson here recently. We sat down with Mike Thompson. We sat down with Brent Anderson. We had 3 different lawmakers introduce legislation this session to address our concerns. We have 2 of these bills. 2 out of 3 of these bills are still active and working through the legislation today. Any of those want to follow along? That's HB 1102 and Senate Bill 2263. And so we're going to continue working those bills. And, our goal is to completely repeal this private leasing legislation, this law that's allowing this. We don't believe in it. We don't believe that it's the correct course of action to continue to maintain and support our oyster reefs. And so we're going to continue working those. We would like to thank Representatives Carolyn Crawford, Timmy Ladner, and Senator Philman Ladner for introducing those pieces of legislation and hearing the concerns of our fishermen. They made decisive action, and we're still working that and have their support. We're going to continue working these bills. Moving forward, short of a full repeal of this legislation or this law that enables the department to lease these historic natural reefs, we'll be looking for compromises. Can we roll back the percentages that the state is allowed to lease? I believe it would probably be wiser, and our fishermen believe it'd be wiser to ease into this private leasing. This data that we showed today shows tremendous recovery of our reefs, and we're poised for a really great recovery, and we expect to see those oysters proliferate throughout the sound based on what we're seeing currently, as long as we can keep that spillway closed in general. I know you're working hard to keep that closed. The fishermen contend that the current lease program criteria set by the legislature does not give ample consideration for our historic traditional oyster fishermen. In fact, when we look at the qualifications, hardly any of our commercial fishermen are eligible to qualify for this program. They do not meet the financial stability requirements that are mentioned and outlined in the law. I really wish that we would have known more about this data. My question is, this stock assessment data, was that shared with the public before we went out for private lease applications?
Ryan, Rick or Jason, when's the last time that we did, I'd have to go back and look at meetings because I don't have them in front of me right now, Ryan, but I can go back and look at whenever we did it, because we looked last year and we looked the year before, because I kept asking for an oyster season and we kept looking, but I'll find out and I'll get you that information.
Well, and we will admit, since the commission has become advisor, we hadn't been following along as closely as we used to. We used to come to these meetings every month and attend and participate. Since it's advisory general, I know how to contact you. I can call you and advise you if we need to. But moving forward here, for example, if we would have known, what was on these reefs in this private leasing program, these fishermen could have went and applied for areas that are currently have oysters that we're leasing out, and they could have factored the harvest of those oysters into their economic business model, so that the money that they would generate from the oysters that's on the ground now could help generate revenue to continue to fund the cultivation and maintenance of these reefs. That would have been a way that we could have got our fishermen to participate.
Ryan, in that comment, one of the things that when we were looking at it, obviously they wanted to know, because of last year, we looked at it, and some of the things, the way the grading came out, is people that didn't really have anything at all they had to do was say they could do this or say they could do that, and then it came out that, wait just a minute, this is not really factual data about what's going on here. So that's why we backed up and regrouped. All right. I don't know that this would have been something that would have helped you at all if you'd have known. And I'll tell you why. Because the way the criteria was set up, it had to prove what you only got graded on what you had done in the past, okay, and what you were capable of doing in the future. That's the way the criteria was written. And it was written to say that we used, and Jason and Rick, what was it, right at $4,000 an acre? Is that was what the number you had to say that you could coach about 4,000? You had the capability of being able to do that. And if you wanted to go and lease 500 acres, you had to be able to do 250 of those acres in the first 5 years to that criteria. And Rick, Jason, y'all tell me if I'm off crack here somewhere, off in another world. But the deal is, it was written that way. And whenever you look at it, the financial, if you think of how much that cost, if you just take 100 acres and you had to go and culch 50 acres, that's a lot of money. And that's what the numbers are that they're looking at. And their idea was, and they came back, and one of the things that I fought with, and I may be part of the problem here, okay? Because I don't want somebody just to come in and take the resource and walk away with it. I want somebody that's going to come in, if they do it, that they're going to maintain it. And that we're not going to just take the resource and walk away with it. So I don't think that being able, and here's what I'm trying to get at with you. I know what you're asking. All right, just say that we had taken a Pass Marianne reef, or whatever, that had oysters on it. And you could, I don't think it would allow it in the way it was written for you to say that I'm going to use this as a resource to be able to qualify. And I don't think it would have worked that way. I don't know that we could have helped either way on that because of the way it was written. But, if we didn't, as far as the resource itself, I'm going to let you know what we did as far as putting it public out there and, and where we were at. Okay.
Okay, General, I appreciate that. I can say, as a fishing community, a lot of these fishermen feel that they've been misled on not only the need and purpose for the private leasing program, but also the health and abundance of the oysters on our public reefs. And, we wish we had a little bit better access to some of this data ahead of time. You may have already put some of that out there. Again, some of that could be on us for not following along closer through the process. There's been a lot of myths postulated about the need for the private leasing that we believe simply just do not hold water. Some of the ones I just want to go through them quickly. We've heard things like, Louisiana has been able to recover their oysters much quicker down in this 3-mile area. We've heard those arguments that, these private lease guys right across the state line, they were able to recover much quicker. I wanted to point out that the state of Louisiana spent extensive amount of money coach planning that area down there shortly after the Bonnet Carré spillway. So it's not a real fair assessment to compare that to what we got going on in Mississippi. Also would like to point out that Louisiana allows their private leaseholders to go onto the public oyster reefs and transplant and relay from the public reefs to their private leases. And they allow those private leaseholders to do that before they open those reefs to the public. And that is a major difference in Louisiana's program and our program that makes theirs work. And, that leads us to the question, is that the intent of the state, or is that the intent of our legislature? Is that the next phase that we're going to see in this private leasing? I know we're keeping 20% now, but eventually these private leasers come to the legislature and say, hey, we want that 20% too. Can we use it as a seed ground? That is the concern from the fishermen. I don't think there's anything in the statute that would protect us from that currently. So we're going to work to address those concerns.
Ryan, if I can real quick,
Yes, sir.
that is by no means the intent that we see in this.
Okay.
I have seen that. And, they let them harvest them at 2 inches or whatever, and then take them and put them on their private leases. That is not any intention on our part that I know of, and I haven't seen anything in legislation that says that. But maybe you brought up a point, and that we need to put that in legislation that they can't do that.
Right.
Because that's the number one. We don't want to do that, because then that's really, to me, I don't see how they could possibly do it and go and do it, because that's spending state and federal taxpayer dollars and giving it to private business, and I don't think we can do that. And now you're going to say, well, wait just a minute, Joe, you did that before, over here if you do these leases over here. I brought that up.
Mm-hmm.
And I brought that up, and that's exactly what I brought up to the legislature and talked about it.
Mm-hmm.
And their idea was that they didn't think that the people would, that if a big company's got that, they would do anything to hurt it. Now, I will tell you, whenever I don't want to say that Joe Spraggins wasn't for leasing at all. Yes, Joe Spraggins is for leasing to a point.
Mm-hmm.
And I just told the legislature, I don't have the funds or the people to maintain properly
Mm-hmm.
the 12,000 acres roughly that we have. And I don't have that when they asked me about it. Now, the number 80/20 was not that number. We could maintain, because what we could do a lot of culturing at this area this time, and this area next time, and this area the next time. And, could I do 80%? No, it wouldn't help me. I can tell you that. I probably couldn't take care of 80%, but I could take care of a number more than 20%.
I hear you. Similar question: is it the state's intent to allow the relay of oysters from these areas for like Pascagoula Reef? We've seen that that area was leased in the last year's applications. Is that the intent? These areas that are currently closed for direct harvest for consumption, to allow these private leasers to lease these areas to relay the oysters? Is that the intent?
No. And, the past, over, Gravelin Bayou, that area,
Mm-hmm.
Pascagoula, that is some of that area got to be restricted.
Mm-hmm.
It was prohibited for a long time, and some of it got to be restricted to the point to where we could move oysters. But let me tell you something. Those oysters cannot be harvested and sold right there at that point.
Right.
Because if they're harvested and sold there, then they won't meet the criteria to meet the health issues. They would have to take them, any of them that's in the restricted area would have to be taken and depurated for at least 14 days, I believe is the number, Rick. Is that right, Jason? Is that right? Yeah.
Right. And that's what we're referring to, General. Is that the intent of the state, to allow the private leasers to lease that Pascagoula Reef to relay those oysters to their private leasers?
Rick is looking at me, so y'all help me. I don't know of anything about this.
Yeah, so there is some areas over there for lease and for leasing, and that is an opportunity. If someone wanted to go in there and harvest those oysters, they could not, like you said, put them in the market without going through the depuration process. So they would have to move them from one area to another before they're available for harvest, if they have their own. But I would say
can tell you they can't count that as if how they qualify. And I don't.
Yeah, and we also have a state-owned reef over there as well that we will continue to maintain.
Okay, but I guess now that I think about it, Ryan, what you're asking, that if you owned a reef anywhere in the Gulf you can move your oysters from one reef to another if you have two different reefs. That's your, if you leased it, you can move either way.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess after thinking about that, yeah, they could possibly do that, but it would be a situation that they would have to let us know what was going on, and it wouldn't be and that could be some seed that's coming there that I had never thought about, but I appreciate your point.
Well, that is concerning for us because that Pascagoula Reef is a tremendous seed reef for the state of Mississippi. You know, we've relayed a tremendous amount of oysters out of that area and transplanted them to other places. Go ahead.
So to that point, I just want to reiterate, we are keeping that state-owned reef over in the east, the Pascagoula Reef. So,
But we are is a sum that's over there for
Majority of it.
lease though. Is a sum over in that restricted area for lease?
there are some areas over there that are for lease, yes. But we identified.
Okay, what he's saying though, what he's saying, Jason, is that if I lease that area, I know I'm not going to sit there and try to cultivate it. So we got to look at that, and that's going to be something we need to look at in this lease. That if they're going to harvest the stuff off of there, they got to continue to cultivate it, and you know, and not to allow somebody to go over there and take those and turn around and put them on a private lease somewhere else, and then make all the. We got to look at that. We got to look into it.
So, you know, we're just beginning to touch on some of the issues and concerns that we foresee, you know, with the private leasing. We hadn't even began to get into the difficulties and challenges with enforcement challenges and keeping the public and private leases, you know, where people aren't stealing off of them. That's a big concern. I would note that Louisiana, on many of their vessels, require a vessel monitoring system, GPS tracking on these boats, so they know where they're at all time. To me, that would be the best route to monitor what's going on, because it's really difficult for enforcement to monitor these areas like Telegraph and other areas offshore. Unless you're flying drones, maybe that might be an enforcement tactic. But, you know, to your point, General, about, you know, saying that the state doesn't have the resources or the capacity to manage these oyster reefs or restore them, you know, that's a difficult thing for us to swallow, to accept. Because every director that's been before you has managed these oyster reefs and did what they needed to do, and they've done it with less money. And so it's really hard for us to accept that argument that the agency cannot do their job here. And you know, what I would say, General, is you know, if we're not able to do our job, if I'm not able to do my job, you know, as a director, if I was the director, then I would probably resign. Because you're essentially telling these fishermen that because you can't do your job, that they should be out of a job. And that's where we're headed. And so, you know, that's where we're at with it. You know, we don't agree with the fact that these names of these leases are being withheld from the public record. I'd love to hear from Sandy what the legal exemption is for not allowing transparency of these names, of the list of names.
He's okay. He's okay.
The General, let me know when my time's up. General, I appreciate you allowing the time to speak. My time has been interrupted through the responses and questions. I would like to say that we're on the verge of a great success story for this agency on the recovery of our oyster reefs. And to say that the state can't do it or has not been able to do it is really selling the staff here short within the agency. They really deserve a big pat on the back because of the oyster assessments that we're seeing. The oysters are coming back. Y'all are doing your job. Things are starting to work. Let's not give it away just too soon. But with that, I'll leave that there. I appreciate the opportunity to indulge.
Well, just a real quick thing, you know, obviously the directors prior to me, I'm not going to say anything about what they've done and what they haven't. I don't think a single one of them ever went through Bonnie Carey in 2019.
I agree with that, General.
I don't think any one of them have ever seen the natural disasters that we've had in this time frame. So, you know, they saw the Bonnie Carey, they saw it get torn up in 2005. If you want to go back to 90s, if you go back to 2005 was the first director after that saw anything, and they saw the hurricane. All right, the hurricane did some damage, but it didn't do the damage where it wiped the total out. Then in 2011, they saw a Bonnie Carey that was halfway devastating compared to what this one was. But they haven't seen that. So did they walk in their shoes? Then I don't think that I have to worry about what they did and what they didn't do. I can tell you right now, if you think that you can tell me how to manage this better, I'd love to hear your points, but I don't think that you can tell me that you can show me the resources that I have, that I've misspent them anyway, because I have put them everywhere that I possibly could to make it work as much as possible. We're lucky to have the resources we have, but you don't have a clue what it takes to manage 12,000 acres. And if you do, you wouldn't be saying that.
Well, I disagree with that assessment, General. And, you know, your points about the natural disasters, you're correct. We can't blame you or this agency for the lack of oysters. But you're the one saying that you can't
And we're gonna
do it.
wrap it up.
But, General, that's exactly what you just said is why the problems we've had with our oysters, natural disasters, not because you can't do your job, not because the agency doesn't have the resources. So thank y'all. Have a great day.
All right. Trevor, spotted sea trout update.
All right, spotted sea trout and cold kill update, which is going to be another straightforward topic to go through, but it's got a few levels to it. If at any point you have any questions as we run through here, because we're going to cover a bunch of different topics, just stop me and we'll explain through. So first off, obviously you are aware, we conducted basically annual stock assessments since 2016. We were able to show improvements overall to the spotted sea trout stock resilience as a whole, and we saw increases in abundance over that time period. Obviously we had Bonnie Carey in 2019. We tried to conduct a preliminary assessment in 2021, and essentially what we saw is that the impacts from the Bonnie Carey spillway and the subsequent rainfall that occurred really had a large impact on the index of abundance for spotted sea trout, while we also had sustained catches of the species over that time period, which basically gave us a false signal as to what was going on in the population. So, obviously we saw the catches. We've had the dealings with red snapper and everything else. We essentially had to go through removal examination on the species, similar to what we did with red snapper. We are currently transitioning to MS krill, so that's laying into a couple of different levels when it comes to us actually running an assessment on the species. And because of that, we decided to move forward with index-based monitoring. And really, this is what we've been pushing for across the board, not only in our state, but also on the federal side as well. This is more of a common sense approach, basically saying we know what data gives us a signal that we can rely on, and we're going to rely on that signal over time until we get the landing time series corrected. And we'll talk a little bit more about the landing time series here in a minute. So, regulatory history, we haven't showed this one in a while, but obviously we've had a lot of changes to this species over time, not only on the recreational side, but also on the commercial side. The January 2017 was when the 15-inch minimum came into place on the species. We had shifts in the endorsement requirements. Those were the last two regulations. That first one being the 20% of your income requirement. 2022 was the $1,000 in fin fish, $5,000 in seafood to qualify. If we look at our recreational and commercial removals over time, this figure on the left, that is going to be that's going to be the recreational catch, and that's going to be from MRIP. You see I've got this red bar highlighted here. That's an exceptionally high year in catch in 2016. We'll go into more detail on that. You can see 2024, we still don't have the last 2 months because that's on a delay for 2 months after the year for it to get finalized and sent to us. So that one's not quite representative. The interesting stories here on the commercial side. So obviously we had a change in the overall endorsement structure, given the regulation change I stated earlier. You can see the impact from Bonnie Carey, 19 and 20, but you've seen the endorsement number gradually increase from 37 all the way up to 100, and you see a stepwise increase also in the landings, where it was at 20,000, and now this previous year we landed over 40,000 pounds of the quota. So we're moving on a positive trajectory on the commercial side, and it looks like hopefully in the next year or two we'll be right where we need to be. All right. So I talked about 2017, and this is a little bit of a complicated subject that I'm gonna try to go through. You've heard this story when it comes to red snapper. You've heard it in a bunch of different ways. You probably listened to it on the council floor, seen it across the board for the Gulf and the South Atlantic. But essentially, there's been a large-scale evaluation of MRIP landings really over the last 5 years, and our staff have done a lot of it. Essentially, we looked at the distribution of wave-specific landings for spotted sea trout. A wave is a 2-month period in the year. And essentially what you just see is some level of patterning across all those waves. We know what our fishery does and how it conducts itself. It's fairly consistent over time, right? You have peaks in the summertime and drop-offs in the wintertime. But if you look here at the figure on the right, the top right, you can see the distribution of wave-specific estimates across all these different months. And you can see here on the right that there's a huge scatter associated with November and December. And there's also a huge number here on the shore side for November and December. Both of those occurred in November, December, which we know is not a very high use wave overall. And they were both over 1 million pounds. And both of those occurred in 2016. And when you combine those together, that leads to that huge bar you saw in 2016. And that's problematic, right? That's saying that we landed 5.4 million pounds of spotted sea trout in a single year, which isn't, our fishery is not able to do that. So obviously we're going to need to reconcile this time series, and that's going to take a little bit of work, but we are going down that route through MS Krill and the efforts that staff have undertaken. In that manner, we've updated you about it a couple times, but here's your first look at basically some direct comparisons of the estimates. So krill is over here in your light green, MRIP is in the blue. You can see there is still a large fold difference, 8 to 10 times across these. To put it into a logical scale, the wave estimate here in wave 3 is 1.2 million. That would mean that essentially every single one of our anglers on average would have to take between 12 and 15 trips in that 2-month time period. That's on average. And as you all are aware, that's not something that typically happens with your regular angler. If you look here at ours, essentially it's saying that approximately 1 to 2 trips is the average across the board, which makes a little bit of sense when you start to think about it, right? You should see this exponential decay. Most folks aren't taking many, and then you have the few that are taking a lot. Look here on our right, so that figure just shows the monthly distribution of effort estimates for the krill survey. And remember, this is the first time we're doing it, so obviously there's some learning curves and everything else. And it's likely we were doing some signal to noise analysis, stuff like that, to be able to look at the uncertainty around these and which estimates are reliable and where we see spikes. And obviously we identified some spikes here where you see this patterning disruption. And so obviously there's some changes here, but overall the krill survey is providing us the exact pattern that we would expect to see in this fishery. It's showing a pattern that's relative to the fishery, and that's common sense test number 1. And it seems to be passing. So here's the overall index. And so, like I said, this is an index-based monitoring approach. This isn't accounting for removals in an assessment or anything else like that. It's important to note that when you include removals into the assessment, that is what scales your biomass estimate. So it's not quite representative for us to think that our removals are 2 to 6 million over this time period and that our biomass should be justified based on that. And the variability that the landing showed also indicates that that's probably not the likely time series that we should be using here. So we used our fishery independent index, which essentially is sampling that occurs across the entire state, month by month. Staff are sent out. And this is basically what it looks like. So walk you through it. Obviously, we had a higher level in the beginning of the time series. We saw this decline. We saw a big recruitment class come in 16 and 17 that was documented, basically with smaller size classes pushing through the fishery. And in 17, it's already been talked about in this meeting, but in 17, we had record rainfall in the single month of July. We had 22 inches of rain. For those of you out on the water, remember you could probably walk across the boats at each ship. They were all stacked up. All the fish were stacked up at the islands. It's likely that event had an impact on recruitment. And then basically for every 2 years since that point, we've seen some manner of impact. So we've had the 22 inches of rain in June during peak spawning season, 19 Bonnie Carey opening, 2021 was record rainfall across the entire coast. So you obviously probably had impacts here to recruitment over time. And really, we've had a regular year for the last 2 or 3 years. So 2022, 2023, and 2024, with the latter two being the most, basically conducive to recruitment. And we see that uptick right here in 2024 at the end of the time series. So it does look like we're on a positive trajectory. Things are looking good for spotted sea trout. I know the fishery's doing well based on everything we've observed and the reports we're getting from fishermen. And I'll go ahead and stop here and get any of your questions about those previous slides on spotted sea trout. Then I'll move to the cold kill.
I think we're good, Trevor.
All right.
Keep rolling.
So we obviously are all well informed about the cold kill. So the background, we had a multi-day freeze event coupled with 8 inches of snow, which is unheard of in this area. The difference between this and what we've experienced in the past, we had frozen precipitation directly into the system and subsequent frozen runoff for multiple days. The impacts observed, that mainly that we saw, were when the temperatures reached 40 degrees and below. And I'll show you a difference between that and a case example. But the first thing we did here was solicit some public reports. So we put out the post on social media to try to get some folks just to have eyes on the ground for us. That way we could spread out a little bit and see exactly what was going on. Obviously, we had a lot of folks reporting across the board, and we were able to really direct our path from there. So we started out on Saturday. We had some reports of obviously some fish out at the island, some larger fish, things like that, and that was really where we were able to start. But just to give you some perspective in the event as a whole, this is a long time series, a 17-year time series of the Bangs Lake Weather Station over at the Near. You can see there's plenty of times where we see these sub-40s, but if you look here at the end of the time series, we see the severe dip. And now this data might need to still be reconciled for a sensor being out of the water or anything else like that, but it just shows you in scale that the event we experienced is unlike one we've seen in the last 17 years as a whole. And that's likely why we saw the impacts that we saw. I also did touch base with everyone's favorite fisheries biologist, Jim Franks, who also said that he has not seen anything like this in his tenure while he has been here. Doesn't mean that it hasn't happened, just means we don't have a recorded observation of it. So we had reports from across the coast. Most of these are restricted to mullet, right, close to canals. Everything else that were around everybody, small tributaries and bayous. We also observed 2 distinct reporting peaks. So one was right after the event, and one was when the fish started to smell and decompose. So obviously when the fish started to float, we started seeing a lot more. And that's something of note for the future of everyone else who deals with these events. Obviously, there's a lag period between when these fish actually die and when they float, and there's about 4 to 5 days that you really have to keep an eye on these things to make sure you're getting a full scope. We did have reports of larger fish, like I mentioned earlier, begin immediately post the event, and the pattern of observations were recognized essentially to be semi-enclosed lagoons outside of the main watersheds in the state. And so we used these reports as an initial guide to be able to go. So we started out at Round, Ship, and Horn Island. And these are basically the semi-enclosed bays and lagoons. There's not a lot of freshwater input, anything else like that. We observed multiple species associated with these kills. It was mullet, spotted sea trout, red drum, black drum, and the concentrations varied across systems. And you can see here in the bottom left, that's a picture at Round Island. And that is basically a large-scale mullet kill. We've got drone footage to go over that we'll look at here in just a minute. You can see the size of some of these spotted sea trout that were included. This one's 27 inches. There's an aerial view of that same picture. This is a spotted sea trout that were out in another area, and then red drum, sheepshead, and black drum. So it was really a multi-species kill across the board that we observed. So, large picture, right? It's not doom and gloom. We saw minimal impacts across the major drainages on the west side of the state and even at Cat Island. Mainly restricted to mullet across the board. In some areas there were thousands, but there were not many in a lot of the areas. We saw a little bit of multi-species impact in Gravelines, but it was mainly mullet with a couple of fish in the shallower areas that were affected. The larger impacts were, as I mentioned, at the Barrier Islands, Round Island, and also in Grand Bay. So here is a video. This is at Ship Island. And I'm playing this one because there was a video that went out that spread across social media and everyone pretty quick. showing a lot of these fish in the water. And we went out the following day because it was concerning to us. So we went out and tried to at least enumerate and see what we were seeing. I know it's not good news, but for most of this is mullet across the board, about 2,500 or so, a few thousand. And within them, there were still spotted sea trout, as you can see piled up on the right. About 150 spotted sea trout, 50 red drum, 50 black drum. And so what was going around is a large-scale trout kill. From our observations, direct observations seem to be mainly restricted to mullet. And this goes on through the entirety of the area. The next one we'll go to is the same one I showed you a picture of at Round Island. So thanks to IT staff, we were able to get out, essentially take an aerial view. And you can see as we go down, the kills themselves are 95% mullet, but mixed in are larger spotted sea trout. There's some red drum here. You'll see a large spotted sea trout here on the left here in just a minute. And we're doing this to try to show essentially what the distribution of the kill looked like overall. Mainly restricted to mullet, but these fish are mixed into that system as well. We'll let this roll through for just a little bit longer, just so you can get a glimpse of it. But it's mainly 95% mullet with species mixed in. Now, obviously, your eyes look to the large spotted sea trout that are included in there. So we try to do a little bit more digging, especially when it came to the next site, which we'll go over, which is Grand Bay. So this is obviously the area with the largest amount of impacts overall. It was a multi-species kill. We observed over 100,000 mullet in the area. We did get some drone footage, but this picture here on the top right really explains it all. You can see those fish are stacked 20 to 30 deep along the shoreline, and that occurred a mile from Bayou Compass all the way out to Point of Ponds. So they were all the way through there. We obviously had some reports from local fishermen in the area that it looked like Middle Bayou had a lot of spotted sea trout in it and red drum. So we essentially went off the path of, if that is the case, then it's a large probability that every upper reach of the tributary is impacted. And that is the case. So we saw multiple large spotted sea trout, undersized and slot sized redfish throughout the upper reaches, and try to cover as much as we could. That there is basically what we were met with. That's a 26.5-inch spotted sea trout that's floating. That's what it looks like. We scooped up 2 more fish that were 24 inches that were still in the bottom. So we didn't have a full float at that point. We were just getting there when they were starting to float up. But here is the case example of what I wanted to show. So once again, the steep peaks here, sometimes that's due to things being out of the water. Maybe it was frozen around the sensor, whatever else. But just look at the general trend of when that line is under 40 degrees. This is Bayou Compass. This is where all the mullet were. You can see it gets sub 40 for a large reach of time during the time period. This is Bangs Lake. We also see sub 40 for a large period of time. And then this is Bayou Heron, which we saw limited impacts restricted to mullet, not a multi-species kill. And you can see that line barely dips below 40 in that time period. So really it was a lot about the exact habitat, how shallow it was, and the amount of runoff that was going into it that really determined the impacts here. And estimated totals. So I rounded these off the best we could. We had multiple staff doing observations. We tried to record what we could, but essentially we're looking at 135,000 mullet, 1,175 spotted sea trout, 1,130 red drum, 550 black drum, and 400 sheepshead. Now that's probably not the totality of everything, but that should be a roundabout number of what we observed. And while it is a staggering amount, it is safe to say that the interior and the bulk of the fishery was spared from this event, probably because of the same things I indicated earlier. The large amounts of volume of water moving through the system, the depth of the system really determined how far the impacts went. So conclusions on the event. So we obviously had observations across the sound. The interior of the fishery is unaffected. We had multi-species kills in a multitude of areas, But what we need to focus on here is just the impact we observed. The main concern that we had was that the length composition of spotted sea trout in the kill shows impact to larger size classes. Smaller fish are in the interior, right? They're sitting in the rivers everywhere else in the deeper holes. These larger fish are out in these areas. And that's basically what we saw. The black boxes here are the last 10 years. This is the length comps of the recreational catch. And then what we see essentially is that the affected size classes for the kill are in the green, and they stretch to the right to the larger size classes associated with the fishery. These larger fish obviously produce more eggs. They're more fecund, higher quality eggs, everything else like that. It does present somewhat of a concern to us that that's what happened, but it does seem to be restricted to those areas that we talked about, so it's probably not a large magnitude. So moving forward, our proposed next steps are to continue monitoring the fishery through those independent monitoring measures and our dependent side to be able to have any observations in length distribution of catches or the catches in the recreational fishery as well. And we also want to monitor recruitment into the fishery over the next 2 years to determine if any impacts occurred to the young of the year. So I showed you that picture after the event that we caught some young of the year fish in the trawl. So hopefully all those fish survived. They'll be able to make a full recruitment status, but we are going to monitor essentially the comps that we see in our fishery independent index to see if we are getting those fish. And then we are developing currently a project to monitor the repopulation of the affected areas to inform potentially how these future events are going to impact long term. So while it is a devastating scenario, this does leave us in the case of having the opportunity to conduct a natural experiment, one that we never get to do unless something like this happened, to be able to see exactly how these areas populate, whether there's a standing biomass around the area, if it's all transitory from the interior, and kind of how that all works. So we're trying to make the best of the situation by doing that. And with that, I'll take any questions y'all have.
So my takeaway is our total abundance is on or was on an uptick prior to this happening. So that's good news. The fish kill itself didn't look great, but it could have been a lot worse. So
absolutely,
we came out relatively well.
Yep. And we're trying to look at essentially what I listed earlier, the large scale freshwater events that occur and the impacts they have. Right now, it's thought that that's probably some level of recruitment impacts. And that's why essentially for the last, every 2 years for the last 8 years, we've had something occur. But in the last 3 years, we haven't. And then you start to see that uptick. You start to see that swing in the fishery, especially in the West, right? The West was mainly impacted across the board. And when we see the West start to pick up, we start to see a better observations in the stock as a whole.
It's interesting that the bigger trout are the ones that aren't as resilient when it comes to the cold weather. Like that. That's very good information. Appreciate it, sir. Thanks, sir. All right, Miss Aisha Gray with the Grand Baynier program update. Or not Aisha Gray.
Sorry. So I'm here for her. I apologize for any gaps in my knowledge of these slides, but I'll do the best I can. Substantially lighter topics. You started or okay. Okay. So I'm just going to go through each sector at the NEAR and give you a short update on things that are going on. This photo shows you Janeel Patel. He's our Davidson Fellow right now. He's a graduate student at Mississippi State. He is studying phosphorus movements in Bangs Lake and Bangs Bayou. And he's collecting bathymetry data right now. It's a big thing that he's been doing, and so that's going to be a valuable data set. We've also collaborated with the University of Florida to sample sediments and water for PFASs, which stands for polyfluoroalkyl substances, kind of throughout the Mississippi Sound. So these are also called forever chemicals. They're found in like flame retardants and they don't go away. And we have no information on them in Mississippi, so it's kind of a cool project. And we've helped with that for the last couple of months. So some of the data that Trevor showed comes from the system-wide monitoring program at Grand Bay. This is 24/7 water quality monitoring. We've kept this equipment running now, and we do it all the time. And so it comes in handy when we have things like fish kills and for a lot of other reasons as well. We did find a dead manatee. I guess that was maybe about a week or 10 days ago. And then another one was found this past weekend. So that's stemming from the cold, I'm sure. And that's kind of a rare thing that we find a dead manatee at Grand Bay. So in stewardship, we hosted some livestock producers and we're forming a grazing advisory team. This is a group of livestock folks from the region. What we are trying to do is get input on a grazing plan that we might use at Grand Bay. We are, actively doing grassland restoration work. We feel like grazing could be another tool in our toolbox and maybe a very valuable one. So we had this group of livestock guys out. We talked to them about our sites and our plans, and they gave us feedback. And it was a very good event, and we hope to have another one before too long. They were all cattlemen, so they were very emphatic that Piney Woods cows would be the best option for vegetation management at Grand Bay. So we do grassland restoration work and we do monitoring of those grasslands. In the wintertime, we're focused on migratory grassland birds. So we're in the middle of those surveys right now. We have 48 of those that we do in a 3-month period across 16 different sites. We've detected over 90 species doing these surveys. We've been doing them since 2019, I believe. So we're in the middle of that and it's going well. So with our coastal training program, they're working on some stormwater management projects in the city of Moss Point. One that is the furthest along is an EPA-funded project at the Creole Elementary School. And I believe they actually started planting for that this weekend. I don't know a ton about this project, but this kind of shows you the overview of what it looks like. You can see where the school is. They did have substantial flooding problems on a regular basis. And we've already had a fair amount of rain since they've done this work. So they're seeing that it's working already. You can see here, these photos show you where they did some excavation. A little over 1,100 feet of bioswales, 5 rain gardens, native plantings. And like I said, it's already been tested with the rain and the snow, and it seems to be working well. And so this kind of shows you where they fill in. They put in these perforated pipes that drain the water and kind of pipe it to the stormwater system faster without, I don't know if I should say faster, but less pressure flooding. And then they put gravel on top of that. So like I said, the next steps were to do the planting, and they've had some school kids out actually even yesterday doing some of the plantings. And I think this project is almost done, so pretty cool. Okay, so as far as the education sector, Jennifer Cumbus, this was mentioned earlier, she was hired as the new education coordinator. We are planning for the Celebrate the Gulf Festival on April 5th. And then we had 2 art workshops in January. Looks like about 24 people showed up for that, so it was a success. You can see some of the batik artwork that they did. And then I think this is the last one. We have a monthly adventure quencher where we have people come out and they learn about what we're doing at Grand Bay, and they get to do something like kayak. It's too cold for that, so we had a sparrow sweep. Where we actually worked with Mississippi State. We netted some Henslow sparrows, which are an endangered sparrow that migrate down here. And we caught a few and talked to the kids about them. And we did have a booth at the Biloxi Boat Show as well. And I believe that's all I have. Any questions?
Great to see all the educational outreach you guys are always doing and the programs. Those are great to watch and see the updates. Appreciate it.
Appreciate that. All right, thank you.
All right, I think we got through the other business. With that being said, anybody want to make a motion to close?
I'll make a motion.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Thanks, everyone.